Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
All hands on deck. Well, we want to talk about that. Some of you who are listening may have known about this because, of course, we do have a lot of seniors and boomers listening to our show. But I'm very fortunate because I have Mr. Jody Madaras, who is the creator and the producer of All Hands on Deck. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, and it's Jody Madaras, yes, and I'm delighted to be with you in the Boomer time.
So it's Madaras, right?
No, Madaras.
Oh, with an S. All right, that's not how my sheet said. Well, I'm glad you corrected me. Madaras.
Yeah.
Okay, Jody.
No problem.
I got it now. All right, so let's now talk about why. Well, first, let's give a little bit of your background and how you got into this.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've been a Broadway performer for nearly 26 years, and I'm originally from the great Buckeye state of Ohio, and made my way to New York, and have performed in many Broadway shows and CBS television and regional theater. But in 2006, I decided I wanted to write my own show, and I wanted to write a show that would showcase a time when our country was fully united. And in my research, I found 1942 is one of the great years in American history where our country was fully united, and everyone in the country felt like they could contribute something to their nation. And so doing research, I came across Bob Hope, and I came across the Hollywood Victory Caravan, which was a group of actors and famous film stars that went out and raised money for the war effort by selling war bonds and doing road shows. And no one had ever thanked them or given them a postage stamp or anything. And so I thought, well, there's my template. Let's write a show that's based on the Hollywood Victory Caravan, and that's how I came up with the All Hands on Deck show.
That's a marvelous response. Wow. So you know, I'm really proud of you. That's so true. And I'll tell you, we've had our expos and we dedicate it to the veterans. And one of the veterans who popped up for our last expo was a man named Carl Muscatella, and he was the sailor who Life magazine took a picture of him kissing that nurse.
Oh yes, right, the famous photograph in Times Square.
And he came to our expo and signed pictures and took them off. So I'm so glad you're doing that. But I guess it is a wonderful time, and so you had to do a lot of research, didn't you?
Oh, I did. But it's the fun research. My degree, I have a degree from the University of Michigan in musical theater, and at that time when I was getting my education, we focused a lot of time and attention on the 1940s and 50s and theater songs and pop music. And so in some ways it was easy for me to choose the songs and choreograph the tap dance. The real trick for me was to orchestrate the big band, and that took a little time. I play the trombone. I also play the piano. But I'm primarily a singer-dancer, and so I had to harness my brass skills and my music theory skills. But I was able to locate several of the original arrangements of these songs, and that helped me out a lot. And so our orchestrations are very authentic, very original sounding, and I think that's why folks like them so much.
So you're telling me you're going to have an orchestra there?
We have a 9-piece, big band orchestra. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's important because everybody longs for the big band orchestra. You know that.
Oh, yes. It's a unique sound, unlike anything else you'll hear, and so it's very special for all of us.
Okay, so how many people are in the cast?
So there are 2 men and 2 women in the cast, and myself included. So there's 4 stars of the show. And then we have a 9-piece live big band orchestra.
And so let's, and I know that people are going to want to go there. So let me get some information right now. It's called All Hands on Deck, which is a great name. We all know what that means, even if we weren't in the Navy. And
that's right.
All Hands on Deck. So, it's playing at that wonderful theater, the Parker Playhouse. It's an easy place to get in. It's beautiful. It's old-fashioned. It's lovely. The acoustics are great, and you want to go now. Mark this on your calendar. It's Thursday, February the 28th, and it's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're not going to run into a lot of traffic. right?
Right.
And the Parker Playhouse has lots of parking, and you really will want to go and see this. It's going to be so uplifting. And I think as Jody, who is the creator, the producer, said, let's get back to a time when everybody loved one another, and America was selling war bonds, and they were, having were they the USO shows, and
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I wrote the piece. And each song in my score really showcases that feeling. And not only that, but how many times do you get to see Broadway stars tap dancing, that Broadway-style tap, the Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire kind of tap. And another part of the show we just really love is the sing-along section. We've had audiences across the nation, full houses singing, piping up their voices and having a marvelous time singing right along with us. And what I realized going along is the fact that some of the folks in the crowd, all of the folks in the crowd know these songs. They just haven't heard them in maybe 30 or 40 years. And so it's like taking a little trip down memory lane, and what a fun one it is.
So give us a sample of some of the songs.
Yeah. Some of the songs, some of my favorite are Chattanooga Choo Choo, Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe is also a big hit. The Pennsylvania Polka is a real kind of a rousing tune. And then as we get into the middle of Act 1, we've got Yankee Doodle Dandy. We do quite a tap dance to that and strike up the band. And then in Act 2, we do something a little different. We turn the stage into a live radio show, a radio broadcast, just like they did. And so our audience becomes the studio audience. We teach them how to applaud with the applause signs and so forth. And some of the songs there include Any Bonds Today, Somebody Loves Me. One of my favorites is also a song called Embraceable You, written by the Gershwins.
Oh, I remember that. Oh, that's a beautiful song.
Beautiful harmony. And we also have a wonderful part of the show. We call it the military medley, and I don't want to give the whole show away to the listeners here, but we feature each of the songs of the different branches of the service, including the Merchant Marines. A lot of folks have never heard of the Merchant Marines and their theme song, and we feature that in the show. It's a very powerful moment.
Well, since I have you knowing so much, I really don't know what the Merchant Marines were responsible for. Were they different than the Coast Guard?
Oh, very, very much so. The Merchant Marines are really, it's a great story. Several years ago in Branson, we were performing the show, and we waited around after the show and had a meet and greet, and a gentleman waited for me, and he said, I was a veteran in World War II. And I said, well, what branch of the service? And he said, well, I'm a very special World War II veteran. You've probably never heard of me. And I thought, I bet he's a merchant mariner. And he said, yes, he was in the Merchant Marines. We've got to be good friends over the years, and he's taught me a lot about the Merchant Marines. The Merchant Marines was basically the supply line for the entire military during World War II. And so when supplies were needed, supplies, you name it, they hauled it. Heave-ho. They would take ammunition and gasoline and food and you name it. They would supply it and take it across the ocean, a very dangerous job. And so a great part of the success of World War II can be paid to the Merchant Marines. And believe it or not, that branch of the service lost more men than any other branch of the service. And I did not know that until I met Gene Barner, the Merchant Marine. And so very important part of the story here.
I guess they were like sitting ducks because they were going open water to bring the various requirements that they were sent out to get.
That's right. That's right. And many times they were, they went out on the high seas without any protection. And so talk about a dangerous job.
Well, I am really glad you did that. I think this will be great. I wonder how many people will attend who either were in the Merchant Marines or their children will be there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And over the years of doing the show, I have met so many wonderful veterans and seniors. And I think the veterans, particularly, and their spouses, enjoy the show because it's reliving these memories, these wonderful memories of a time when our country was united, and a time when all these veterans really felt that they were contributing something. And boy, they sure did, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. My husband was in the Air Force. He flew 34 missions in B-17. So, yeah.
So you know.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but he certainly was a hero doing that. So it's great that you're doing this. So you said, now, you are, of course, the producer, the collaborator. You're it. If it weren't for you, it
That's
wouldn't
right.
happen. Are you actually then in the show?
I am.
You couldn't stay out, could you?
Can you blame me?
No.
Golly, the 42 of the greatest American songs ever written. I love singing each and every one of them and dancing and so forth. I am the creator and the producer of the show, and I play the role of Ted Crosley in the show. And Ted is loosely based on Bob Hope. Ted is the host of the show, and he's quite a character.
Oh, so you're funny too.
Well, I try in a Jack Benny / Danny Kaye sort of way.
Now this is terrific. So tell me, but you've been in theater, you've been doing this, and have you taken this all over the country now, or you're just here for this one show?
We have taken this all over the country. In the last almost 7 years, I have taken our show all across the good old U.S. of A. And we also spend a couple months each year performing the show in Branson, Missouri, which is the live entertainment live music entertainment capital of the world. And we have a great time in Branson, as you can imagine. And so, also one of the other stars of the show is Valerie Hill, who plays the lovely Miss Betty Blake. And Betty Blake is based on Frances Langford, who was a wonderful actress and singer. You may remember song that she I'm in the Mood for Love was her signature song. And Valerie Hill has been doing the show almost 5 years. And she's a Broadway performer. She plays Betty Blake, as I mentioned. And all I can tell you is the gentlemen in the crowd love her. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I'm sure she's dressed gorgeously. You know, if I'm not mistaken, it was Langford who had a home up in Palm Beach County, but north, like in Stewart or something. Does that make sense? Do you remember that?
It could very well be.
I think so. She was people talked about her home up there. But anyway, getting into this, so I was curious. Do you have to pay for the rights to use those songs?
Yes, I do. Wherever we go, but the rates are, of course, very reasonable. And several of the songs are in what's known as the public domain, which means they're not subject to royalties. And so, and then of course our script is a script that I wrote based on the Hollywood Victory Caravan, and all the choreography in the show and the orchestrations I pay myself because I wrote them. So,
well, you are having fun, aren't you? I can hear it. You are just. This is probably one of the most delightful things, even though you've been in other people's shows. This is yours, and you love it.
I sure do. I have a wonderful time. And I think also part of it is that the songs are the real stars of the show. Those songs just make you feel good. I don't know how else to describe it. And as a performer and entertainer, it's fun to go out every night and sing material and perform material that I like to do, you know. So
yeah, I like that. And so I want everyone to know my guest is Mr. Jody Madaras, and he's the creator, producer of All Hands on Deck. And the way you're going to go to see this, and I hope you will, it's playing at the Parker Playhouse on Thursday, February the 28th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The Parker Playhouse is located at 707 Northeast 8th Street in Fort Lauderdale. And for tickets, this is what you do. You can do a couple of things. You can go to the browardcenter.org. Just go online, browardcenter.org, or you can call 954 954-462-0222. And I'll repeat that. Get your pencils out. You know, this is Pencil Talk Radio. It's 954-462-0222. And I guess what I really want to talk about is that it sounds so interesting that you turned the second part into a radio show.
Boy, it is so much fun. You know, those radio shows were under 30 minutes. They're usually a little over 20 minutes in 1942. And so you can imagine that they had to cram a lot of material in. But most of all, they crammed in the jokes. They crammed in the funny songs and funny moments and funny lyrics. And we have just a ball doing it. It's our little party. That's what we always say.
Well, I remember, of course, sitting by a radio. I mean, I'm older, and I remember we sat by a radio and waited for the shadow, for all those special kinds of things. And I think that the people who go will really love this. And you did say that, and I think this is always wonderful, that people will be allowed to sing.
Oh, yes. They not only will they be allowed, they'll be encouraged, and who could hold them back? So, yes, bring your voices, and for the veterans, wear your cap, or wear something that identifies you as a veteran, and so forth. And for the spouses, wear something patriotic, red, white, and blue, and that's what our show is all about, celebrating our country, 1942 style. And also, if you've got a grandchild, or if there's a family that would like to, share live music with their children, kids love the show because they don't get to hear a live big band very often, and so it's quite a moment for young minds and young ears and young eyes as well.
Yep, they'll never forget it, and I'm so glad you brought this back, because it's one thing to hear this on YouTube or some other place, but to sit in a live audience and have this done, and I'm sure everyone's as enthusiastic as you, because, music really does that to people.
It does. It's live. Nothing beats a live performance. And, the other fun thing about, as I'm sure your listeners know, live performance, there's always something different. Something may happen. They may not make a mistake or something, but something on stage, it's a unique moment that, you may never see it again. And we've had several of those moments in the years that makes the show so much fun.
You call it ad-libbing, right?
Well, we do.
I would think that maybe some people will yell out from the audience. They're so enthused. Is that what happens?
But funny you mention that. We were in Toledo, Ohio, which is near my hometown of Pemberville, Ohio. And, yes, we were at the Valentine Theater in Toledo, and we had just started the show, and we had just finished Chattanooga Choo Choo, and the crowd applauded, and all of a sudden this gentleman, maybe in the third or fourth row, just yelled out, "Play it again! Play it again!" And he wouldn't stop unless we played it again.
No, that's great.
The crowd just howled.
Of course. Well, they
loved it.
I went to Chattanooga where they had all that, and there is a choo-choo there, really.
Yeah. Toe tapping fun. That's the thing.
It's interesting. I recently went to a theater performance. I forget exactly which one, and the woman sitting next to me couldn't stop singing, and of course, no one was supposed to be singing, but she couldn't stop it. So I said, okay, she wants to sing. She did it low, but she had to get into it. So now when you tell me people can sing and they're encouraged, what a raucous that must be.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. What else is funny in Act 2 in the radio show? We do a couple of those, we call them old-fashioned radio commercials. One of them is for Maxwell House Coffee. And people just howl because they haven't heard this in 40 years. But it also points out the power of music and in commercial and sales, even with coffee and things of this nature. That jingle, they call it a jingle.
Yep.
How important those jingles were, very catchy tunes, short catchy tunes. And we've got a few of those in Act 2 that it just brings a smile to everybody's faces.
And we all remember Good to the Last Drop, right?
Yeah, that's right. Or More of Everything You Want with Mercury, if anybody remembers that.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a great thing that you sound very creative. So you have something else in mind in the future? You're just going to keep going with this?
Well, I'll tell you, as a matter of fact, I'm glad you asked, Anita. I'm in the process right now of writing what I call a children's version of the All Hands on Deck show.
Huh.
And it's going to be featured, and we'll roll it out here at the end of 2019. I can't reveal the title yet, but it's a very catchy title. But the whole point of the show, it's based on the All Hands on Deck show using the same characters, but I'd like to take it around to schools and universities all across the country in order to show young folks that they can and should have a relationship with their country. And how fun is that?
That's fantastic.
That teaches some shared civic values and patriotism and a good old-fashioned American unity. And so that's my next project.
Oh, well, I knew you were just too creative to just do one thing. Well, that's an excellent idea because I know that the kids, we've got to get them away from these iPhones and the iPads and all that. They need to see live theater. And then many of them will get into it themselves because they'll say, gee, I want to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And I figure, too, that one of the great strengths of our country is the fact that our country works best when we are all involved and all contributing. And I think young people maybe need to hear that, you know, and to be kind of told that in the nicest way possible, taught this concept. And, teachers do an amazing job all around our country, but they've got a big job in schools to teach history and mathematics and English and the arts and so forth. There's not a lot of time, I think, for teachers to add this one on to their docket. And so I am happy to create a show that will do this.
So they can just sit back and everybody can attend this 30-minute or however long it is performance. And I'm so happy that you've thought of something like this. This should go very well, and I know you'll be bringing it back here to South Florida also for all the other places you go. It's a big country, though, isn't it? I mean, you've been doing this, you said, for 7 years.
That's right. I have to tell you that I'm a very blessed man in the sense that I have performed in 49 of the 50 states and 43 countries around the world. And so, and let me just say, I love Florida. So, so I've got one more state to go and a few more countries to go. But the United States is the last best hope for man on the planet. It is the greatest nation because of our freedom and our opportunity. And my grandfather was born near Budapest, Hungary, and all the Madarases came through Ellis Island. And because of their hard work and their determination, I am the beneficiary of all of that. And so, sharing some of this with young minds, I think is also my responsibility and all of our responsibilities to pass on the best of our nation to these young minds.
That's interesting. You should say that my grandparents, on one side came from Budapest, Hungary, and they went through Ellis Island too. And so many people were immigrants, and they did make their way. And so this is good. Where do you go abroad, and do they? I have to assume they love this also.
Yes. Now I have not been fortunate enough yet to take the All Hands on Deck show abroad. But my own personal career, I've been all over Europe and in Japan, performing in Japan, and Canada and so forth. Whenever I perform across the pond, so to speak, I enjoy it very much. But it reminds me of how special our country really is.
Well, I want to say, though, I have a very close friend who's English. She and her family adore the United States, and I would think that England would be very open for this performance. I just believe that. Well,
and if any of the listeners out there, are English or know of an English presenter or anyone in England that would like to bring us across the pond, please have them call me.
Well, I'm going to ask my English friend, because I know that that is really a market that, when you saw, of course, the movie Churchill, and you saw all the things that they've done, they would love this because they remember this. This was their hope.
Absolutely. And, we'd love to go to England. So I'll take you up on that offer.
Well, I'm going to, I'm glad we had the conversation. One never knows, does one, what can come out of this. But, so for those of you listening, if you have any ideas, you can get in touch with us at our office. But I think that, Mr. Jody Madaras, who's the creator, producer of All Hands on Deck, really has something wonderful going. And he's right. We need to get our children, we need to get our grandchildren into the spirit to appreciate what we have created all throughout the years, and the music. This isn't just someone talking. This is music and jokes and I'm sure gorgeous costumes, and so that's.
Oh yes, yes. It's speaking of the costumes, the ladies in the show are really worth talking about. Let me tell you, because all of our costuming is authentic in set in 1942. But the women, particularly the gals, from head to toe, all I can say is when you're at the show, and I mean this in the nicest, most respectable way, guys, take a look at the gals' gams at the legs, and you will see a unique.
Right.
A unique costume there, a unique set of hose, as they call it, or pantyhose.
Okay.
That's all I'll say.
Okay.
It's all authentic. Very, very neat. Very tasteful.
Well, Jody, this has been a great show, and I'm so glad that you were able to fit this into your busy schedule, and we hope everybody will go. Remember, just go to browardcenter.org or call 954-462-0222. We hope we inspired you, and go enjoy yourselves. Thank you, Jody.
You're welcome, Anita. Can't wait to see everybody there.
Right. Okay. Bye.